What's up, everyone? Thralls Mellow here once again. I'm Nick, and I have an album review for you. So, on the 6th of March, My Dying Bride released their 14th studio album, The Ghost of Orion. This came out on Nuclear Blast Records, and this band really doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I'll give a little bit one. They've been around since 1990. They're from Halifax, England, and they are one of the pioneers of death doom. Between them and Paradise Lost, they were really one of the founders of the sound. And this is their first album in 5 years, and this definitely has some personal notes for the frontman, Aaron Stainthorpe. I'll go into that a little bit later. So I'd say this is definitely a long-awaited album for fans of this band. So it opens up with Your Broken Shore, and right away you just get exactly what they're about. Big, crushing riffs, but with these beautiful, sullen melodies over top. They're almost kind of folkish even before the strings come in, which they have a lot of strings on here, cellos, violin, and it really just kind of adds to the sorrow. It's, the whole thing they're all about. This is a very depressive band, and where a lot of death doom bands will actually take on different subject matters that even revolve more around death metal, these guys stick with a very gothic atmosphere and the very forlorn feeling, and that is permeated throughout this entire song. Aaron's vocals are particularly strong on this entire album. This one, it showcases his really sullen, downtrodden delivery, but it's very tuneful, melodic, but he can switch gears right around the pre-chorus on this song to this nasty death roar. And on this album, the death roars are kind of kept to a minimal, but they're used very effectively where they show up. Now, I thought it was kind of weird reviewing this when it was sunny and nice out, because it felt like it just should have been raining and dark and dreary. So it was kind of an interesting contrast reviewing something like this when it's just nice and kind of happy out, because no part of this album is really happy or uplifting. The next track, To Outlive the Gods, really keeps with that theme, except this one kind of skips over any harsh vocals. This is all clean vocals on this, and the vocals are all very harmonized. They're all done by Aaron on this, but I have a feeling the band probably harmonizes with them live, and it just has this really outstanding effect. The vocals on this album are fantastic, and I really don't get into lyrics very much in reviews, but lyrically, this guy is a poet of depression, I guess you could say, because they really just sort of permeate the mood here, like that this is like a funeral dirge, and these are like the last rites being read, which it could have been because the song Tired of Tears was about his 5-year-old daughter and her battle with cancer. So this definitely had a personal note, and honestly, when I read the lyrics, I mean, they really just hit home. He was pretty much telling death, do not take my daughter. And the song is absolutely beautiful. I think it's one of the best songs on here. And the fact that there's so much emotional weight and emotional heaviness mixed in with the outright heaviness of the track. And again, this one's all clean vocals, but you just pretty much feel the weight of all the emotion behind this, because, again, this is very personal, and probably one of the most personal things I think he's ever written about. The song is loaded with memorable riffs, and I think the chorus is particularly strong. And like I said, you couldn't help but to feel for him, especially knowing what the song was about. And if you do get the album, there is a link in the linear notes for his charity, for his family, considering all they went through with his daughter. And I believe she's in full remission now, which is awesome. But I'm probably going to actually donate to that, because I know some friends that went through the same thing. So definitely a good cause there. Now, on this album, there's really pockmarked little interludes, I guess, but they almost kind of work as entire songs. The Solace was one that I thought was going to be a song that's over 5 minutes long, and a lot of these tracks are really long. It felt like it was teasing a big, epic, heavy song, but it's pretty much just the guitarist playing a really sullen melody, which is really good, but it's not unlike a lot of the other stuff on here, and without the drums and the bass to really carry it and the extra strings and such, it's just kind of empty. And this actually has a female vocal part on it, which is really good. It actually sounds very like Lord of the Rings or Braveheart, like a very folky melody, almost a funeral dirge or a battle hymn. It's an interesting song, but it really didn't lead into the next song very well, and it kind of took the steam out considering how breathtaking the song before it was. Now, the Long Black Land is one where they start bringing back more of the Death Doom elements. The growls show up again, but they're also paired with his wonderful singing voice on this, too. And it's interesting that this one, he kind of stays in more of a baritone range, where I guess the other ones, he's kind of in a tenor range, but it's all harmonized and layered, so sometimes it's really hard to tell. But this one, the vocals seemed a little bit lower, and it was a little bit of a change there that I noticed that I thought was really good. Now, this actually has a little violin lead on it. Now, the violins generally are playing like a lead melody across most of the songs here, but this one actually felt like almost like a little mini solo, because it didn't just follow, the riff as much. It actually kind of did its own thing for just a little bit, and I thought that was a nice little nuance there. At this point, hearing the harsh vocals again, I kind of wanted it to do a little bit more death metal influence in here, like bring out the death metal side of Death Doom. But it still kind of stuck to more of a doomy pace, and very similar to Paradise Lost, which we're jamming right now, which I thought was really good, but it was kind of missing that energy that, I felt should have been there, and has definitely been there in our previous releases. This song, however, has an amazing bridge. This is a really cool, slow build of a song. It keeps getting layered and more epic, and honestly, it's one of the most memorable spots on this entire album, which this album is loaded with memorable songs. But I really loved the dynamic of how this part just kept building and building, and it all came together really beautifully. And when the vocals finally come in, it just kind of caps off this moment very well. And it goes right into a Death Doom ending, which was something I kind of thought was missing, but it kind of brought in that extra heft at the end and closed the song beautifully. Now, this goes into another interlude, but it kind of works as a song, and I do like the atmosphere on it, because it's not necessarily doomy, it's more creepy. It's the title track, Ghost of Orion, which is mostly an acoustic melody with some strings and whispered vocals, which added to the atmosphere. It was really kind of haunting and creepy sounding. It didn't lead in the next track particularly well, which was kind of an issue I had with these interlude tracks, but I thought this one was actually pretty cool at building atmosphere. And the next track, The Old Earth, is quite possibly my favorite one on here. It's the longest track at over 10 minutes, and this one really brings in some of the true blue Death Doom elements. This song is built incredibly well. The transitions are amazing on here. Right from the beginning, it has a really cool acoustic melody, and that keeps building in terms of layers and harmonies, and then the vocals come in, which pretty much announce the big riff is coming, and it does. It just explodes with heaviness, and really just love the overall feel of this song. Now, this one has probably the most flat-out death metal section on here. The guitars actually get really chuggy at one point, and this is easily the heaviest moment on the album musically, and it's just absolutely massive. I really dug how it started off more like they were doing before, but it's really built to this really, really heavy moment with a giant hook in it. And there are tons of great hooks on here, but a lot of them can be a little similar. This one stood out because it was notably just heavy. Now, the closing track was kind of an interesting choice. Generally, I like the big epic closer, which if you guys watch these reviews, that's something I always bring up. This actually closed with a string section and choirs. It's actually kind of uplifting. This is probably the one moment on the album I'd say was uplifting, like the sun breaking through the clouds after a storm. This was the ray of hope, and it might have had something to do with the theme of this album too. Overall, I can't knock it, because this album definitely has kind of a long journey feel to it, and this feels like the proper end. Plus, The Old Earth was such an incredible track that could have worked as a giant closer there, and this is just the little bit to really just send it off at the end, just to remind you all of what you've gone through. And once again, the strings are used very beautifully on here. They're very effective, and they once again enhance the already somber tone on this album, which, man, this album is a downer, but it's really good. So overall, I'm going to give it 4 stars. This is a killer album, and for their first offering in 5 years, this is a welcome return. My issues with it are minimal. I think maybe the interludes, well, I think they were good, didn't lead into tracks very well, and I would have liked to have heard a little bit more of the growling on here. It's mostly sing on here, which Aaron has a fantastic singing voice, but this album brings giant riffs, huge atmosphere. It's just pretty much everything you look for in doom and death metal. And I love the overall gothic quality of the album too. Good listen. So if you like the review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe. Because if you subscribe, you are entered in our giveaway for a Cryptopsy hoodie. Once we hit 1,000 subs, we're going to do a little randomizer, and one of you lucky people are going to get a Cryptopsy hoodie. That should sound pretty cool. Alright guys, I'll catch you later.